So it's the last installment of Real Talk for this semester, and we had an open mic Q&A kind of thing that we did with the students, and we really only got to about 2 or 3 questions because the very first question was about angels and gender. So they asked if, this is a question I think is a nice question, a nice, safe question, easy question about angels and them having different genders. And I said, well, I can tell you for sure they don't have sexes because they don't have physical bodies that would express their sexuality, express their sex. They don't have chromosomes. They don't have different body parts, things like that. So they're just spirits. They don't have any physical bodies, even though the ones behind me here, and right over here, and here do. Their angels are just pure spirits. Now they can manipulate the environment, but they can't. They don't show up as we see them here. That's not what they would look like. They would be different. But it's a rendering that artists have made for centuries, and that's what we look at them as. That was one question, and then we moved on to another question that probably took the whole time. It was about, I try to think how we even got into it, but they asked the question about if 2 moms and 2 dads are as good as a dad and a mom. So I guess the question would be same-sex parenting versus opposite-sex parenting. And I told the students, like, this is a question that you guys are gonna have to wrestle with. That many students around the United States do think about. Like, let's say I come from a same-sex parent family, and I see somebody in my class that has opposite-sex parents, and I think, well, why do I have 2 moms and they have a dad and a mom, or why do I have 2 dads and they have 2 moms? How does all this stuff work? It starts to get these questions in these students' heads, and many of the students, obviously, I think just because of the bubble, kind of, so to say, that we live in, we talked about this previously, they really thought like, oh, come on, man, of course, you gotta have a dad and a mom, you gotta be able to go to your mom with the questions, and, they give that kind of thing, or they give their instant responses. But I said to them, like, well, have you ever, like, looked up what the research says? And obviously students aren't going around researching this stuff, I wouldn't think. They probably have other things to research, like how to get more followers on the Instagrams. But I said, I've done the research on it and looked on there, and not done but done some research on it and looked to see what studies say. And I was surprised to find that many of the studies that you find on the internet would lead you to believe that same-sex parenting is equally as effective as opposite-sex parenting, that 2 moms or 2 dads is equally as effective as having a dad and a mom, regardless of the sex of the child. And I think that the students were kind of surprised to hear that, and they were like, oh, man, what the... Like, some kid goes, that's dumb. I go, okay, I appreciate that you said that you think it's dumb, but the stats and the facts seem to point differently than what your opinion is. So I think I really dealt with the same thing when I saw those statistics and when I saw those studies. Then I started to think about it a little bit more, and I started to think about here's the conclusions that I came from it, and I shared it with the students. I said, okay, I see what the internet's telling me, and I see what the studies are telling me. You line them up. You search that keyword, and boom, they just line them up right there, and there's no difference. But I started to think about, okay, if you're studying these same-sex couples, and this is some of the scrutinies that these studies will get. If you're studying same-sex couples or you're studying opposite-sex couples, to be a same-sex couple, you're going to already be pre-qualified. You cannot create your own children with you two, so there must be some extenuating circumstances that you got these children. And probably to get these children, you would have had to have undergone some kind of filter. People just don't hand out kids to anybody. We know when you adopt a child, it takes a lot of background checking to make sure that the child that is going to this home is going to be a well provided for home. And obviously, the people that have children have probably gone through these background checks. They've gone through these checks of their houses and things to make sure that the child is going to a good home. So they're already pre-filtered. Whereas if you're an opposite sex couple and you just happen to have a child, there's no filtering for who gets to have a child as an opposite sex couple, as a man and woman. You can just have children. It just happens, and sometimes it happens by accident. Sometimes it happens on purpose. And you never know what you're going to get. So in my mind, it would be that many times you might be comparing a pre-qualified couple compared with a not pre-qualified couple, and to say that they match up equally would be like, well, hey, these are already the best of the best. These are just a random assortment, and they match up equally. You would think that if it was truly equal, that these would actually be better because they're already pre-qualified. But to say that they're only equal, I think shows that there is a little bit of there's a difference between the 2 different kinds of parents. Not only that, but we know the benefits of having a father and a mother in the home. So there's plenty of studies out there that will show. My wife, being a teacher, would know that in the classroom, in the school, she actually has a program in her school called Watchdogs, where they know that these students behave better, they perform better when there are male there's a male presence in the school. They know this to be true. That's what they do. They put these programs into schools to have men there. I mean, we even know the difference between having a man in a classroom and a woman in a classroom. There's just different things that happen, both pro and con. There's different things. So we know that to be true. We also know that in the prisons, many of these men that we find in prisons grew up without fathers. They didn't have a good fatherly role model. So they're finding themselves that there's a common thread between many of these men that they didn't have a good father in their house or any father at all. And so we see it as a negative on their life to not have a father. And I think we all know it's good to have a mother. You know, it's obviously true. Yeah, we know that mothers and fathers are both important. So we see the research over here that says that. But then this research over here says that you can have two mothers and it's no different. Two fathers and it's no different. So my question is like, well, how is this research saying something that this research isn't saying? Where's the fault? They can't both be right where they're equal, because they're obviously not equal over here, but they are equal over here. So what's the difference? Where's the rub? And you know, overall, I would say that, and I've heard many people say this, that as a child of two parents, it's my right. I have a right to know where I came from. I have a right to have good parents. I think that in the United States we say it's a right that every child should have. They should be able to have two loving parents. If you can't have two loving parents, man, it's just, I mean, what else can you, I mean, it's a fundamental, basic need for a child to have two loving parents, to know where they came from. It doesn't always work out like that. You know, like my parents were divorced. Some of the students in our classroom, their parents were divorced. Maybe some of them were, it's not always like that. You know, it's not always perfect. But that's what we would strive for. And so as a child, I want to know where I come from. I want to know why I act the way I act, why I look the way I look. That's what we always kind of want to know. Where did I come from? And so for these children that don't know where their parents are, they don't know who their parents are, that's a problem in their life. They want to know where they came from. So whether one of your parents is your biological parent and the other one isn't, or both of your parents aren't your biological parents, it puts up a little bit of a problem in your life. So to not know where you came from would be an infraction on your rights. So that question took up a whole chunk of time, because there's plenty of, side conversations and, oh, man, like these kids are getting worked up about it. But I've enjoyed having your students in Real Talk this year. I don't think any of your students will be in Real Talk next year, because we do talk about some similar questions. So to have them in there again, they would get the same questions again. So we'll try to get a whole new crop of students there. But if you do want to respond back at all with any other questions you guys have, or I obviously recommend that you have these conversations with your own kids, because as I keep saying in all of these videos, that you guys are the primary catechists of your kids and the primary source of information, and you guys can do way more work than I could ever do. You know, I know some of these things, I do the research on them, but I would encourage you guys to do it the same, because your impact on your students is infinitely greater than mine, because of the time that you spend with them and because of who you are. You're their parents. You're where they came from. You're the best thing they got going for them, other than Jesus Christ. But you're awesome. You guys are their parents. So keep having these conversations with your students, because it's just going to get more complicated as they get into high school. I mean, these are the questions we're talking about with middle schoolers. These are the questions that they're bringing to class. So have these conversations and make sure that they're well prepared for the scenarios that they're going to encounter, because that's the reality is one day they're going to be out there on their own. We're not always going to be sitting right here giving them the answers. So I've enjoyed it, and I thank you guys for the opportunity to do this at St. Pat's.